The following is a presentation of the Black Hollywood Live Network, the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. Hollywood Redefined. From Los Angeles, California, presented by Maria Menounos and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies, this is Black Hollywood Live. Success is the new black, featuring in-depth interviews with today's top businessmen and women. Black Hollywood Live, Hollywood Redefined.
You're listening to Black Hollywood Live.
And now, the host of Black Hollywood Live, Success is the New Black.
Hello and welcome. This is the first episode of Success is the New Black. My name is Ron Moore. I am your host, but I am not alone. I'm also joined across the table from me. It's the beautiful, beautiful Miss English Cleveland. How are you doing today?
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our first show.
Yes, and we have a good show indeed.
Yes, we do.
Our first guest for Success is the New Black, where we talk to successful people, not just African Americans, in all different walks of life, entertainment, business, government. And today we have the Honorable Justice Michael L. Douglas of Nevada. He has been on the Supreme Court since 2004, and we are happy to have him with us today. How are you doing, Justice?
I'm doing very well.
All right, all right. Oh, man. Well, I guess we'll just get directly into it. To make it to your status, to make it to where you are, a lot of people have the common story of mother and father in home or things like that. I don't know your personal beginnings. So how did you start? Who are your parents?
My parents are Elmer and Lottie Douglas. They're Los Angeles people. My dad went to the L.A. Jefferson High School. My mom went to the old L.A. Polytechnic High School, which is now Trade Tech campus downtown.
Did they take you any, because you've been a lot of places. So did they ever take you away from the area that you grew up in? Because a common story, a common thread out of that area, especially when you say Jefferson High School, is a lot of people don't ever leave that area or don't learn about the rest of Los Angeles or many, many other things. I know a lot of guys from South Central that didn't even see the beach until they were about 18, 19, 20 years old.
Right.
Does that story apply to you, or were you different?
Would be different. As I said, my dad went to Jeff, mom went to Polytechnic. My mom grew up kind of in the downtown area more so. Her mother had a house over in what is Koreatown, over off of Western and Olympic.
Okay.
Pico area. So by the time I was involved, we were living over in that area, then back down to kind of the 28th and Central area, and then back over to the west side, and eventually my elementary school period and junior high, I was over in the, I'll call it the Avenues, Van Ness and 54th, between Slauson, over that area.
And back then, especially during the Slauson area, that was a very interesting era down there. I've watched a lot of documentaries about that area during that time, and how pretty much the entire culture changed, the neighborhood changed. The Slausons being the big time street gang that was running around down there at the time. Was that going on when you were young?
That was, we didn't see it. That was more out in the Fremont area, but we knew about them.
Okay.
So by the time, for me, the junior high school period in high school was the mid-'60s. But we had, my father was a teacher, my mother was a secretary. My father taught high school out at Norbonne and then Dorsey, coached football and track and baseball.
Okay. So you had pretty much a thread that a lot of people don't have in their lives, which is early education, with parents being involved in education. Do you credit that with making a difference in pretty much your start?
it made a big difference. But let me back up. In my situation, my father was the baby of 13. My mother was one of 6.
Oh, big families.
My father, he was the only one out of his family who went to, quote, advanced school. So he graduated high school, went to the Navy, came back, UCLA Junior College, had me, then eventually into UCLA, and then out as a brand new teacher. And he worked the whole time he was in school.
Wow.
Yeah,
so it was kind of like I came up with, like, no excuses.
Yeah. Definitely understand that, man. Did he hold you to a high level of responsibility?
There were expectations.
Okay.
There were expectations that I was going to go to school and do the best I could do. Yeah, there were expectations. Whether I met them or not was a different story. But
yeah.
They had expectations.
Yeah, I can relate. I grew up, my mother also was a teacher on many different levels, from high school all the way up to some college classes. So I definitely understand when you say there were expectations in that house, especially with your generation. You needed to, if you didn't meet those expectations, you had to come as close as you could.
That was it exactly. That was it exactly. And we were at a very interesting time. Like you said, the Avenue District, the Crenshaw District, it was at a time when that area on that part of town, which is folks don't understand today, was just being integrated.
Mm. Yeah, that definitely creates a interesting microcosm of just all kinds of different elements moving in and moving out. Let me ask you a question about the Watts riots, considering that you didn't live in that area, but you were close to that area when that went down in the 60s. Did your parents explain to you what was going on?
Well, by the time when the Watts riots went down for me, I was a 11th grader going into 12th grade at Dorsey.
Okay.
We were in the area of Slauson and Angeles Vista by that point.
Mm-hmm.
So we were well outside because Crenshaw was the top of the curfew district. And I understood what was going on. Matter of fact, thereafter, the National Guard was bivouacked at Dorsey High School.
Oh, wow, okay.
And you go back, and one of the major events during that time was one of the National Guard elements that was doing a secure deal over off of 39th and Degnan. Their machine gun went off and wound up killing somebody.
Oh, wow.
And one of those famous names popped up. Johnny Cochran represented the family.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Against the state.
Yeah. Back. Wow. I had no idea he was even involved back then.
I know. So long ago.
And he was a young attorney then.
Cool. And we'll be moving our way along your journey along that same path, because after you came out of Dorsey, you attended Cal State Long Beach, correct?
Cal State Long Beach, but along the way I went to LA City College.
Okay.
And I was at LA City College for 2 years, played football in junior college, and was transferring as a student and also a student athlete to Long Beach State to play football.
Okay. Did you see yourself playing football, or did you see yourself with, as most people would say, a regular 9 to 5?
I got to be regular 9 to 5. It was one of those things that kind of hurt a knee, a minor thing, but I realized that the sports end of it was fun. At that point, I wasn't going to be a pro, and I needed to begin working because I had a child coming and be a student. So I wound up working a swing shift and going to school full-time during the day. Oh,
wow. Man, yeah, that's a common thread today. I don't know if we heard it so much back then. I'm pretty sure it still happened, though, as you're a testament to it.
I had a whole bunch of friends who were kind of doing the same thing I was. Some were married, some weren't married. They were working either three-quarter time or working full-time and going to school. Most of them were going days, and we had either swing shift jobs or night jobs to make it happen.
Yeah, to do what you had to do.
Where did you work at?
I did some work as a account reconciler
Okay.
with one of the banks. We were checking accounts at night. I worked for department stores during Christmas and things like that. And then a strange relationship began. I went to work for the YMCA.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah.
So you did pretty much a little bit of everything.
Did those kind of things. Stayed with the YMCA for a while, even a year after I graduated from Long Beach as a program director.
Okay.
Came back and did special programs. They have a Kids to Camp program where they take kids who are unable to pay, sponsored by the LA Times Campership Funds and some other things. I train staffs and take those kids up to the mountains for a week. Inner city welfare kids. From Crenshaw Y and 28th Street Y and what is now the south side of South Central YMCA.
Okay, yeah, you've done a lot, definitely a lot supporting the youth in California and Nevada as well. Is that pretty much where you started getting involved in the community?
That, because of family, as I said, my dad was a coach, and I was kind of programmed to go into education and be a coach.
Mm-hmm.
And along the way, I realized that to coach and teach and to have any kind of income coming in, you needed some type of advanced degree, a master's or such.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was looking at getting a master's in history or political science, and I had some buddies who were saying, you ought to think about law school. And I took the exams, and with a little help from some friends, was able to get on the waiting list and get accepted to the University of California, Hastings College of Law up in San Francisco.
Okay, so before that, did you have no thought of going into justice, into law?
Not into law. It's like I was a political science major. What do you do with that? I wasn't sure. I worked for the government, but it was interesting. As with a lot of things from the side of the ledger, I didn't have a point of reference. Mm-hmm. I had met one or two lawyers,
mm-hmm.
but I really didn't know lawyers.
Okay, so basically...
it wasn't something I was pushed toward. I knew people in education. I knew some blacks who were in music. I knew folks in contracting and general business. But law, I met some but really didn't know them.
Okay. So you didn't have any mentors or nothing that said at this point of your life, this is what I'm going to do?
No.
Okay, so wow, that's almost, I'm just going to law school almost, hey, I got in.
that was it. Looked up and all of a sudden I saw some people I had known, had gone to school with, and they were pursuing the same course.
Okay. And how was your time at Hastings?
It was really interesting. To be in San Francisco, California in 1971 was just extremely interesting. It was after the riots at San Francisco State.
Mm-hmm.
They were demonstrating the Vietnamese War in San Francisco proper, as well as the East Bay over in Berkeley. I was living in Oakland and commuting across pre-BART to the city to go to school.
Wow, yeah, that was a very, very pivotal time for this nation when you bring up the Vietnam War and the fact that you were in what turned into incredibly liberal San Francisco in that area, and to be living in Oakland and taking the BART over into San Francisco. I wasn't there. Obviously, I wasn't old enough, but how segregated was San Francisco at that time? Was there much of that at all?
San Francisco was neighborhoods. The Castro that was Hispanic, the Chinatown area, the Italian section of town and whatnot.
Okay.
The downtown was cleaned up out of the downtown center. The Tenderloin, which was predominantly African American. And then you had the hippie part that was still there, Haight-Ashbury.
Mm-hmm. Still holding on.
Still holding on. So it was an interesting place. But as a graduate student and not being from there, you kind of get into your little life and the life of getting up, going to school, going to the library, and just trying to get to the day and learn the craft.
Yeah.
And then commuting back into Oakland for the evening and the weekends, and hanging out on the East Bay between Berkeley and Oakland.
Okay, well,
and it was just kind of a difference in night and day. San Francisco was a glamorous city.
mm-hmm.
Berkeley was the free-spirited city, and then you had Oakland, which was kind of working class.
Okay. And so you got to see all sides of it.
Yeah.
And did you have any family in San Francisco, or were you completely on your own?
Not so much on my own. I started law school with a classmate from high school, fraternity, Long Beach State. Had a friend who was a year ahead of us at Hastings, who also came out of Long Beach, and Dorsey via Alabama. His folks had gotten him out of Alabama because of the civil rights stuff and wanted him to stay alive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, tell me about it. I'm originally from Birmingham, man. I know.
Yeah, he was from the Ham, and his folks said, you got to go.
Okay, yeah. I came out here, too. I didn't come out here to stay alive, though. We didn't have as much to fight for in Birmingham when I left. It was 2005.
He came out, it was about 63. And so by the time we got to law school in 71, life was a lot better, but it was still insane.
Okay. Let me ask you this question, because personally for me, I know my life changed a lot when I decided to move to Los Angeles. I was away from my mother, away from my stepfather, out of the house, living on my own, pretty much building a life, as you said. Was that a super transformational time for you? Did it develop any habits that you learned to keep, pretty much?
I'm not sure if I learned any habits more so than just the fact that I was really more than at any other time responsible for me. And so, you figured out how to make every penny work for you in terms of eating.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Pay your rent, have some food, and stretch the food out. And so, as they say, it was going to the grocery store and adding up on your fingers what you were spending.
Yeah, they talk about recessions now. Everybody, when you're 20-something years old, trying to survive.
Especially in law school.
Yeah.
Super expensive.
How was the workload as far as the college workload?
At some points, law school was a different paradigm for me because, as I said, an undergraduate, I was working full-time and going to school full-time. And so I got to law school, and I was just going to law school except for the summer period.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a full-time student. So from that standpoint, I was able to buckle down and just study. So it made it a lot better than trying to work part-time. I did some volunteer work with the legal services office in the Tenderloin and some other voluntary things, but they don't consume your time like a full-time job does.
Mm-hmm. And when you graduated from Hastings, you found your way to Philadelphia.
Yeah, I came back into L.A., did some work with the YMCA of Los Angeles, doing some fundraising and special things.
Okay.
Did some teaching at the community college level part-time at L.A. Southwest and L.A. Trade Tech. And the buddy who got me into law school originally, he and his wife were back in Philly. They had a small law firm. They were after me, come on back, help us make this a big law firm.
Mm-hmm.
So I flew back, took a bar exam, came back to Southern California, and 4 months later or whatever it was, got my results in the mail, says you pass. And so I looked at my wife, I said, I guess we're moving to Philadelphia. So we, bought some stuff and then sold off our other stuff and drove back to Philadelphia and I joined his small 2-lawyer law firm with a paralegal.
Okay.
In downtown Philadelphia, lived out in Germantown area of Philly, right outside the city.
So in Philly with your wife, Wow. Let me ask you this. When did you get married? Because in today's age, obviously, if you're married and in law school and working, you're pretty much insane at this point. How were you able to hold all of that together?
Yeah, sanity is always a question. I at that point, as they say, progress and everything else. I'm presently in my third marriage, and that was my third marriage when I got to Philly.
Okay.
I got married when I was second year in school, had a daughter. As they say, didn't take.
Mm-hmm.
Got married again when I was in law school my last year, and we parted and got married a couple of years later, and been married like 35 years now.
Oh, wow.
So, as they say, might not have been as smart.
Yeah. Yeah, I was about to say, Justice was having fun.
San Francisco.
Yeah. Hey, it was that time period.
Right. Very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, like you said, I came up in a time because of the civil rights and the Vietnam and things of that nature, when parents, especially my generation type parents, looked at us because the doors were opening and said, "You got no excuses. You need to go to school. You can make something of yourself." Mm-hmm. So I got pushed, and the people around me were being pushed. But the push was interesting because the push was, you need to be successful. But they didn't define success as lots and lots of money. Success was have a job, be able to take care of you, and then be able to take care of you and your babies if you have them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was successful. And then if you had something, if it was your own business, or you were punching the clock full time so you got that retirement, or you did get a degree and you did something, that was all gravy.
Mm-hmm. That was just cherry on top.
Yeah, but the work ethic, take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Is that something you also instill in your children? Well, I know that they're grown now, but I know your daughter is grown, but in your 3 grandchildren, because I know you have also grandchildren.
Yeah, my daughter's a teacher. She lives up in Oakland, California. She had gone to San Francisco State. After graduating high school, she started in L.A., came up to Vegas, went back to L.A., then went to school at San Francisco State and got a master's at Mills. Okay. And she has 3 children. Her oldest is graduating from high school this year.
Okay.
So she was the 3rd generation in the family of college. And so, it was, again, about, can you take care of you and the folks around you?
Mm-hmm. Did your grandchild who just finished, did they have any pressure to you're a grandchild of a
he's a senior in high school. He's gotten 2 college acceptances and waiting on his 3rd. But yeah, they big time pressure.
Okay, yeah.
And the 16-year-old daughter, I don't know where she came from, because she's different from me and different from my daughter, because she gets upset when she gets A minuses.
Oh, wow.
That's good.
If I got C pluses, I was doing a dance.
Yeah.
Me too.
To us, you're Justice Douglas, but to them, you're granddad. So are you the typical grandfather, passing out, dollars when they see you, or are you the, hey, bring me good grades and then we'll see about rewarding you later?
A little of both.
Cool.
Being a grandparent is great because you get to spoil them and give them back.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Always good to have fun.
You want some candy? You want some ice cream? And mom's giving you this dirty look. It's like, I don't care. I'm grandpa. I'm going to leave.
Yeah. Well, let me shift gears for a second and ask you, do you believe, especially in the African American community, that there's not enough of that same system being implemented to make sure Black children are raised with that set of expectations?
I guess the easiest answer is yes. And it's a combination. It's a default, unfortunately. In many of the families, you have kids raising kids now, and they're second and third generation. Because of the economics in this country since, say, the 70s, it's tough to get a job without an education or being part of a training program, and people that were in franchise, working in auto industry and aerospace in Southern California. You can call them factory jobs, but they were very good paying and steady factory jobs.
Right.
Have been displaced because the economy has left.
Yeah.
Or they've been displaced because they're not part of the tech generation.
Yeah.
And that's really important. It seems we were in the community. We were told, get in the books, and it was kind of like when I came out of school. I don't know about you, but it was like you're going to either go to school, get a job, or get in the military.
Mm-hmm.
You had one of three choices. That was it. Because the fourth choice was get out of my house.
Yeah. Hey, that choice is still on a lot of parents' tables right now. I'll tell you that.
I don't care where you go, but you got to get out of here.
Yeah. You got to go. Mommy and daddy want to have fun.
And, and that's changed because you have kids having to come back in because they can't make it out there because things are so tough.
Right.
Yeah. You got guys graduating and they can't find jobs now.
Yeah,
in
but
today's
that
economy.
expectation, and it was like I had parents and aunts and uncles who were pushing myself and my other first cousins, your grandparents who were the same way. You need to, quote, make something of yourself, boy. And like I said, that was make something of yourself, which meant you were going to figure out how to support yourself, take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
And education and, wearing a shirt and tie was nice, but that wasn't it. If you worked for the railroad, which I had a cousin that did and a step-grandfather who did, or you worked for the gas company, or you drove a sanitation truck, really didn't matter. You were taking care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely understand what you're saying there. I'm going to go ahead and jump over the Philly years because the majority of your life is in Nevada. The majority of your career has been in Nevada. And I don't want to run out of time. I definitely want to get to some of this stuff. But you came to Las Vegas in July of 1983. Am I correct?
End of 82, 83, July, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It was two things. As I said, I'd gone back to Philly to practice law with some friends.
Mm-hmm.
They decided that they wanted to move the office down to the Washington, D.C. area.
Okay.
I didn't know if I really wanted to do that. It was like, at that point, it was like, do I want to come back west? Do I really need to be in Los Angeles? I had a cousin who had left Los Angeles, had come to Las Vegas. Despite popular belief, he didn't live in a casino. He had been a radio news person, working for Willie Davis, the former Green Bay Packer owner of a beer franchise at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Station changed formats. He was out of a job. He got offered a job as a station engineer in Las Vegas. He packed up his Volkswagen and moved up to Las Vegas.
And moved on. So at least that way, that's how you got introduced to it.
I got introduced to Las Vegas, realized people got to live in houses and strange little town outside the Strip.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I was in Philly looking to figure out what I was going to do, I picked up a magazine and it said, attorneys wanted any bar for legal services. And if I was going to move back across country, it'd be nice to have work.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely going to need a job.
So I filled out a resume, sent it out, did a blind interview over the phone, and got hired.
Wow.
And, stuck a whole bunch of stuff in the truck, including a car, and pulled another one, and came to Philadelphia with an idea that we'd give it 3 years and see how it worked.
Mm-hmm.
So I lived in Vegas, and I finished a year of high school in Vegas. And what is the first initial reaction when you moved to Vegas that you noticed that was different from California? Minus the weather and everyone saying, "Do you live on the Strip?"
What's your
You
favorite
took the
casino?
first thing away from me. It was hot.
Yes.
Yeah.
We moved to Las Vegas in July.
The hottest month.
And it was at 2:00 in the morning. It was 112 degrees.
Yes. I do
So
not
it's
miss
like,
that.
what did I get myself into? The funny thing was coming from the east where you have humidity. It was like, thank God for the dry heat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, you do not have to explain that to this Alabama boy.
What I noticed, what I hadn't appreciated as a visitor, was that the black population in Las Vegas at that point was about 10% of the population. And then the other thing that I didn't realize till after I got here, the population in the greater Las Vegas Valley at that point was only about 135,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so small.
Way smaller.
Yeah, so when you come from Los Angeles and go to San Francisco and go to Philadelphia and then come someplace like here in Las Vegas with that population, it's a whole different animal.
Yeah, you can have 100,000 people just in a few blocks of
Right.
downtown Los
Yeah.
Angeles.
Yeah.
And then the other part that I didn't realize until I got here, and it's like, okay, I'm going to, I missed the first exam, so I took the bar exam the following year, but I was able to work on my other license with the special admission deal for legal services. I find out that in the whole state, there's barely 10 licensed African-American attorneys at the time.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, not just the city, but the whole state.
The entire state of Nevada, 10.
Yeah,
Wow.
yes.
And this was in 83.
Yeah.
Wow.
And what I found out was the kind of the best and the brightest who had grown up in Las Vegas would leave and didn't come back because so many doors were closed. I hadn't realized that Las Vegas had been given the name the Mississippi of the West.
Which is, that's a rough nickname to have.
Do you still think that it still has that conception of a lot of successful people as far as like sports and basketball and, football or, these high school kids when they progress and they go to the NFL or NBA? Do you think that Vegas is a welcoming city back to want to come and represent?
It is now. When the economic boom hit, things began to change. The change, though, was led by people coming from other places with the degrees and the skills.
Right.
But because of that model, kids that were coming out of school were coming back and doors were being opened. That if they had the skill set, they could persevere, as they say. They could get jobs. They could be places. But you still have some issues that you still need not apply for certain things. I mean, I got here in 83, and I met people who had grown up here, were limited. Their parents, in some cases, were the first people of color who were allowed to work out on the Strip in a position other than a maid or a janitor.
Coming into that environment, how difficult was that to overcome? I mean, you're coming to Las Vegas as a lawyer. You just said they're 10 in the entire state, and pretty much Las Vegas at this time is segregated without actual Jim Crow type segregation.
And it's not that far from California.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it had begun to change. It was still, still there to a degree, but it had begun to change. It was a situation on the dice table. They call it money plays. If you put your money out there, they'll take it. And if you win, you get some. If not, they take it. But I didn't have to look for, say, a place to live exclusively in the old West Side, the traditional black part of town.
Mm-hmm.
You could go to wherever your money would take you.
Okay.
But it was still strange because it was almost like they had their quota, their number.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have one working here and we have one working there. And those were things that, say, in Southern California, that was the 50s into the early 60s. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden I'm in a situation where, gee, this is strange. It's like 20 years behind what I was used to.
Right.
Yeah.
What has changed the most, like the most shocking thing that's changed in Vegas since you've been there?
Outside of just the pure growth, where you have the number last night was 2.6 million people in the valley, opposed to 135,000.
Right.
Is the increase in, like every place else on the West Coast, the increase in the Hispanic and the Asian population.
Yes.
Hispanic population is almost 30%. The Asian population is about 12%, and the black population is down to about 8%.
Wow.
Is it?
I had no idea it was that low
Wow.
there.
I didn't know that either.
Jumping on. Go ahead, Justice.
And I was going to say a state, because I've had to run statewide. That's the number statewide based upon primarily the number in Las Vegas and Reno, Nevada. Because once you get out in the small communities outside of that, it's ones and twos that you find.
Exactly.
So it was very interesting running a statewide election, having to go into small communities and ask people for your vote.
Yeah. With you doing, especially with you being a justice, I can ask you this question. You just said 8% of, was that the Valley, the Las Vegas Valley? And
yes.
In this country, African Americans make up, 12% of the entire country, but we make up 40% of the prisons. Your work with the youth and in both states especially, does it show you, do you see a trend where we're starting to trend away from those type of numbers? Because that's a huge disparity.
Unfortunately, the disparity is there. And the others, it's a sad commentary of why people are starting to do the right thing of not wanting to put everybody in jail, is the economics of what it costs to put people in jail.
Right.
Yeah.
Every night when you turn on the news or you pick up the paper, there's a story about there's only so much money in the state of California or the state of Nevada or the city of Los Angeles or the city of Las Vegas. And we need it for education or parks and recs or streets or, schools or fire or police. So why are we wasting it on the most expensive bed in town, which is a jail? And so they're willing to now look at shorter sentencing. They're willing to look at something that's kind of near and dear, what we call specialty courts that you have throughout the country that help folks who have drug and alcohol and mental health problems, so as not to just warehouse them in jail. The other kind of inherent question you're asking is what they call the pipeline from cradle to jail in minority communities, because kids aren't given the adequate education. The job opportunities are less on the back end, and the recent reports that were coming out of the Attorney General for the United States talks about the tendency to sanction and dismiss from school minority kids at a higher rate. And I'm very happy Eric Holder, our Attorney General, is starting to look at that seriously.
Yeah. Yeah, that's...
Because
go ahead.
When you're scarred early and you can't complete the education, especially in the techie society we live in, you're being locked out.
Yeah, that's cutting an entire generation off at the knees, literally almost.
I have a question. Do you find that it's hard to be raised as a youth in Nevada and opposed to Los Angeles, where there's so much more opportunity here and so many free things, I would say, to do. Instead, I found like in Nevada, outside of the Strip, there weren't a lot of things to involve the teenagers in and the youth, and, you know, for them to have instead of violence.
Teenagers are a hard animal, no matter
where. You're right. You're right.
Got that right.
What you have in Las Vegas, much like you have in Southern California especially, is for the kids, and you hit it on the head, up to about 16, they're heavily involved in Girl Scouts, YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, soccer, baseball, cheerleaders, Pop Warner.
Right.
Those kinds of things, and programs that are being run by adult groups or fraternity and sorority groups. But all of a sudden they hit that 16, 17, and all of a sudden they're just there. What do they do and where do they go?
Right.
And that's a problem in Southern Cal, and it's a problem here in Las Vegas as well. And unlike California, and I'm not sure, it gets harder and harder in California because Disneyland ain't cheap no more. Nor is Six Flags Magic Mountain and such like that. So they're left with the same things which have changed somewhat, and that is, do you have house parties? Do you have parties at the gyms in the park or the church or things like that? And then can other groups, in essence, who are trying to get involved for mentoring purposes to help kids with education or early job training or exposure, they can only skim kind of like the top group of those kids.
Right.
So it gets tough. It gets real tough. And you probably notice it here more, but having grown up in LA with no illusions, I see it there just as badly. But it's hidden. You know, and the biggest time, the hardest time is summertime. What kids do during the summer.
Yeah, that's
when
it.
they're out.
That's what I found. It was hard. I'm born and raised in California, from Burbank, and so there was, the communities very small, and there was a lot of things for youth to do. And when I said free, I meant like California has so much like hiking, and the weather in the summer is hot, but you can still go to the beach and if you want to go to the snow in the winter. In Nevada, you're very limited to what you can do, and especially in the summer, you do not want to step foot outside of your house because it's so hot.
Thank God for malls that have air conditioning.
Right.
Yeah.
It's an interesting commentary because, again, LA has gotten easier to navigate because of public transportation now.
Yes.
Bringing back a light rail so people can get around and do things. But the comment that was made at the beginning about early years, I met folks in LA when I was coming up that had never been to the beach, had never been up to Lake Arrowhead. If they lived in LA proper, they might not have ever gotten out to the San Fernando Valley. So sometimes it's relative to where you are. LA has gotten more mobile, and busing the kids all over for education has expanded that.
Yes.
But you did hit it on the head, because the area of Las Vegas, we do have what a lot of folks don't understand. 40 minutes outside, you have Mount Charleston, where you have pine forests and snow, but kids don't get up there too often. It's just too far away, and there's no easy way to get it. The big hole out there, Lake Mead, it used to be free. Now you have a charge because it's a national park. So you're kind of stuck with what is going on, and unless in the community, the various West Side Center, the cultural centers, as they want to call them, parts of the park, are doing jazz concerts or other concerts, which the cities and the counties are trying to put a little more money into to give the teens, as you hit it, something to do and some place to go.
Yeah, and I just heard the lineup on the radio here, and it sounded great. I was like, I may go back home.
Oh,
I may
yeah.
not home, but I may go back to Vegas just to go.
Check it out. Yeah. Yeah, because to us, it's a
like I
vacation.
said, it's hard because you're dealing with a whole group of kids that if they can't find, you're taking out the summer job programs in most of the cities.
Right.
And economics are such that you have older folks taking up the jobs that kids used to get.
Yeah.
Or people who are having to work 2 and 3 jobs to make it work.
Yeah.
So that's off the table. So, the question is, what can you do so kids can do something and not get themselves in trouble because they got nothing else to do?
Yeah. They can't, just like you said, they can't even get jobs now because 20, 30 years ago, the average age of a McDonald's worker was 19, and now the average age of a McDonald's worker is 28.
Right.
So you have older people taking up the positions that are usually theirs.
Yeah, and in Las Vegas, they've had to do something. It's a good and a bad all at the same time, but it creates a problem. And that's it. They put curfews on the Strip.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
To keep the teenagers who are not accompanied by adults off the Strip, because it's like, well, if you got no money, we don't need you hanging out there because you're going to create a problem.
Isn't the curfew, though, midnight?
Yeah.
I find that very strange because, curfew here in California is like 10 or 9 for children that are 18 and young or under the age of 18, but in a state that is very thrived off of money and then, the strip clubs and all of that the Strip has to offer. It's weird that it was picked midnight to be curfew.
Well, curfew is an interesting term because curfew is kind of like if you're just hanging out. And expectation of kids has changed, and it makes it harder. Folks don't hang out at the hamburger stands in the parking lots the way they used to and things like that, partly because of you still have it, not to the same degree you once had it, but the gang violence and things like that meant you didn't want to just hang around in strange neighborhoods because you'd get shot.
Yeah.
Just by,
I want to jump off of that for a quick second because of what you just said. When you see a group of black teens, especially, you almost you wonder if something going to happen. But back then, with it being so few of you when you first came into Las Vegas as a lawyer, and you guys, I'm pretty sure you were a close-knit group because usually if it's, if you're in a world of white and you're the only black people around, just out of human nature, you're going to find each other and support each other.
Right.
Did you ever have any moments like that where they looked at you even? Matter of fact, I heard a story that you told in an interview of when you first walked in. You walked into a courtroom and they thought you were the defendant.
Yeah, they thought I was there to, have something done. A different perception.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like you get spoiled when you're used to being perceived just because you're there and you're dressed appropriately as someone who belongs there. You're in a coat and tie. You must be there, opposed to you walk into someplace, scenario in Southern California or whatever. You go into an auto showroom of high-end cars, and they look at you and they look at you like, "Can we help you?" Not, "Are you interested in buying a car?"
Yes.
That mentality is changing a lot because you can't tell with money or without money, but there's a stereotype that's attached still if you have color. And that's still prevalent here. In some cases, you'll walk in someplace and people will kind of look at you like, "Well, what do you want and can we help you?" And you don't walk around, I don't walk around in what I like to say, my black dress in the road. So as I frequent places and on weekends in jeans and T-shirt or whatever, you go into places and some places are very professional and they treat you appropriate, and you go into other places and you'll catch somebody and they're kind of like, Do you know how much this cost or whatever? And you just kind of look at them and say, still?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like this is still going on.
Yeah. So it's changed a great deal, and the industry on the Strip has changed because, again, money plays, and so they figure if you're inside one of those places, you must have the fare to be there. But then it dissipates as you come down the ladder into high-end shops or other places. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like no different than if you walk into Beverly Hills and you're attire and they just don't recognize your face, they may treat you different. Mm-hmm. But it's a gradual change. And as I said, it's in a place that's 10 or 15 years behind what I was used to in Southern California. Mm-hmm. And when you look at Southern California and having grown up and seen the first mayor of color in Los Angeles and first police chief of color and other things occur, mm-hmm. and that's in Los Angeles, and I come here and they have to go through that those same steps.
Yeah. Did it feel like more of a sense of accomplishment being in a place that had to go through that, as opposed to staying in California and possibly achieving the same thing, but in an area that it already had happened? Or was it important to you to do it in a new place?
It wasn't so much important for me to do it in a new place. I didn't really feel or understand the importance until I was here and kind of understood what the city and the state were and the importance of it. Mm-hmm. And even today, as I meet people and I'm just trying to do my job, and somebody will say, yeah, we keep track of what you're doing. And one of the most unique things, and there are a lot of unique things, I will give you an example, but in, we're 2014, so I guess it's 3 years back, or almost 4 years back. We have a system in our court that, based on a rotation, you become the Chief Justice for the year. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So after being the first on the court, some years later, I become the first Black Chief Justice in the state. Mm-hmm. I also then had the privilege of swearing into office the first Latino governor of the state. Mm. So significance becomes very interesting.
Right, yeah.
I was about to say, because we were running a little bit out of time, so I do want to ask you one last question, because you were the first African-American Chief Justice on that court, as you just said. We're still creating first. In 2014, mm-hmm. we're still making first. Are there any other firsts that you would like to see us accomplish as a race?
Well, we're I guess between Oprah and Johnson, we may have the first gazillionaires.
Got that right.
I would like to see, as a group, us get out of the drug dependency, mm-hmm. and hopefully, which we don't have, but we become more akin to being business entrepreneurs, self-sufficient, our own businesses, our own shops, and putting the money back to work mm-hmm. in the community.
Back in our own community and into our own culture.
Right.
Taking care of ourselves.
Yep, self-sufficient. That's it. Well, I want to definitely take this time to thank you for doing this show, Justice Douglas, because you didn't have to do it, mm-hmm. and I've heard a lot. Personally, I know his nephew, mm-hmm. and his nephew mentioned him to me and told me about him. And when I looked him up, I said, "Man, I gotta get this guy." And as soon as I called him and I read up on you, and I saw everything that you did for young people in all kinds of communities from mm-hmm. all different cultures, I just wanted to take this time to thank you for coming on Success is the New Black on Black Hollywood Live.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate that.
All right. No problem, Justice Douglas.
It was great meeting you. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure.
And I'm just going to, before we wrap real quick, English, where can people contact you at?
You can find me on Instagram at Pink English, as well on Twitter, English Speaks.
Cool. And I am Rome Tharulo on Twitter, and you can also look me up on Facebook under Rome Moore. Just want to close out with a quote that the justice said in an interview on the internet, where he said, "If I'm to be successful when it's all over, it's not about what I did, but could I bring along anyone else?" Mm-hmm. And he surely has done that. For Chief Jugglers, well, he's not chief anymore, but for Justice Douglas, Michael L. Douglas out of Carson City, actually, but we talked a lot about Vegas. Mm-hmm. For English Cleveland, for Rome Moore, this has been Success is the New Black of Black Hollywood Live.
From producers Maria Menounos, Dario Kristen, Tiana Hobson, Kevin Undergaro, and the entire BHL crew, we would like to thank you for supporting Black Hollywood Live, the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. For questions and comments, contact us at info@blackhollywoodlive.com. Like us on Facebook, tweet us, or Instagram us at BHL Online. And I'm your BHL announcer, Scipio. Instagram me at Planet Scipio. Thank you for tuning in. The views expressed here are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of BHL or its owners or principals.
Thanks for watching Black Hollywood Live on YouTube. For more in-depth interviews and news, subscribe to our channel here, and be sure to share your opinion in the comment section below here. See you soon, everyone. Bye.